The January 6th committee is barreling ahead. It will now hold its final public meeting Monday. That's new information. There are going to be announcements we expect on that day, one of their last official meetings about criminal referrals. That's also the day that they will formally vote to release the final report. If you've been following this closely, you may recall that that is due Wednesday, and that remains the case. This is them Monday having the vote on important stuff and clearing the report for a release date of Wednesday. But as with any committee, they have to actually hold the vote to release what is this long-expected conclusion to the voluminous investigation. All of this comes as some other evidence has been uncovered. Secret texts to the #1 Trump official during that period in January when they were trying to stage a coup, Mark Meadows. And some of this shows the nature of the support from within the government. MAGA lawmakers went to the White House, and they had all kinds of ways that they thought they could still, at that late date, overturn the election. Now, a news site, Talking Points Memo, has obtained these messages. NBC News has not, but they are not really in doubt at this point. TPM has asked for comment, for example, from many of the members cited. At least 30 members of Congress texted Meadows along various lines. One Republican, Ralph Norman, wrote about an idea to invoke martial law, saying we're at a point of no return in saving our republic. Our last hope is invoking martial law. Please urge the president to do so. Or Jim Jordan, a well-known Republican poised to take more power in the gavel when Republicans take over the House in January, was texting on January 5th, that's of course Insurrection Eve, that there was an unconstitutionally appointed elector, like an unconstitutionally enacted statute is no elector at all. You will note that is a baseline of the planned legalistic coup that they wanted to do the next day, meaning even had nobody ever entered the Capitol illegally, they still wanted to unconstitutionally put forward fraudulent electors to stop the peaceful transfer of power under law. And Brian Babin, another Republican, said, quote, Mark, when we lose Trump, we lose our republic. Fight like hell and find a way. You can also see the impact of conspiracy theories at the highest level of government. One of the things that we've been living through together and that we try to report on quite precisely around here is the difference between the liars and the lied to. There are many people in the United States who have been told lies and they believe them. And that's a certain kind of public and political problem. Then there are the liars who know they're lying. And then there are some of the, what I'm calling the lied to, who are in government positions of power, at least as best we can tell from the evidence, which is to say that even in private, with messages they thought would never come out. Remember, this is before the insurrection, before January 6th. This is before they had any reason to think that any governing body would be taking what were secret communications. They were saying things like this. This is a congressman. DNI needs to task NSA to immediately seize and begin looking for international communications related to Dominion. Was China malware involved, he asks? Why can't we just work with the Italian government is the follow-up. Now, what I'm telling you here is in November, that's the private pleas to the Chief of Staff Meadows. It looks like someone who actually believes the crap coming out of various conspiracy theories and then using their power and their access to the White House to push it. And that is perhaps different than people like Donald Trump, who declared before the election even occurred that he intended to claim victory even if he lost, that he was told he lost, that he, in a very real sense, knew he lost and was lying about it. Here you have someone who might seem to credibly believe in private that these really bananas conspiracy theories about foreign governments secretly doing all this stuff, that was real. And this is just some of the clues we're getting as Congress prepares through its committee to do something that it's never done before, potentially formally refer a former president for prosecution by the Justice Department. Those are the stakes as we go into this next week. And I want to bring in two of our legal experts, NYU law professor Melissa Murray and New York Times Magazine writer Emily Bazelon. Welcome to both of you. Professor, your thoughts on what this new text evidence shows against the backdrop of the committee getting ready to formally conclude next week.
Well, Ari, when I read this Talking Points memo dispatch, I was a little stunned. I mean, it really does read like a bunch of toddlers just on fumes and sending text messages furiously. I almost felt bad for Mark Meadows having to read this in the aftermath of the election. I mean, it really is just a hodgepodge of wild and random conspiracy theories. And I think the January 6th Select Committee, if they are truly interested in holding individuals accountable, they will have to take some really deep steps to think about whether criminal referrals are necessary here. I mean, it seems like we have quite a significant number of elected representatives in the federal legislature who believe that Donald Trump was erroneously robbed of the presidency and did everything in their authority to try and thwart the transition of Joe Biden to the presidency. I mean, it really is an astonishing tranche of text messages.
Yeah, I mean, you lay out, again, what part of what I referred to in the evidence, Emily, which helps you understand the world. Whether it is a defense, right, is a different analysis. But the fact that you have people in these positions of power who believe lies, that makes them in very real ways dangerous to the government, dangerous to their own constituents. Whether or not they pass a criminal line is something else. I want to read another text for your analysis, what the professor referred to here from the Toddler files. This is Congressman Gosar saying, when's the 45 days up? What date starts the clock? November 3rd? If it is, then that's December 18th. China bought Dominion in October for $400 million. If that's not interference, then should have a report with details and specifics that would validate that either way. And if they didn't call me, I have some fireworks coming out of AZ early tomorrow. Call me anytime. I'm up. And again, as a newscaster and not a method actor, I can't really do justice to the sheer energy, I think, in the text there, Emily. But by the end, you have Gosar basically pleading with the chief of staff, hey, I'm up, call me anytime. It's a sort of a MAGA equivalent to a you up text. You know, you up, want to come by and plan the rest of the coup. And so in its frivolous silliness, it sort of can seem minor. And if this were the only one, I would say, I always try to keep it real with viewers. I mean, I would say, well, one person out of 435 in Congress is one thing. But what about when it's dozens? And what about when they acted on it? And what about when inside the DOJ, Trump had help? What about the fact that they were trying to enact, some of them, a bloodless coup?
Right. They're very excited and excitable. And the tone of these texts is a willingness to believe and eagerness to believe and to persuade Mark Meadows to take action. There's just this sense of, you know, time is slipping away. We have to do something. Martial law, you know, laws are unconstitutional or could be. A kind of anything goes atmosphere. And it must have been quite something for Meadows to be pinged with all of these requests, to then be sort of trying to check out some of them with the Justice Department. I mean, you just get this sense of frenzied activity in the days after the election and leading up to January 6th. We know from January 6th where that led, and it feels like a progression that could have that kind of outcome because it's just so excited.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber. Thanks for watching The Beat. I wanted to let you know I'm writing a foreword to the January 6th committee's full report, which is coming out soon from HarperCollins. You can go pre-order the book right now, and it'll come to you first when the report comes out in the fall or whenever the government releases it. Just search Melber Jan 6 on Amazon or your favorite independent book site and click pre-order. You'll be the first to get both the report and my new piece on the coup conspiracy. You can also go to melberbook.com and order it there.